Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei teleported in Justice League and Harem? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Within the cold heart of space was a massive spaceship that was holding many innocent civilizations, worlds and more, but the true monstrosity was the one who commanded it all. And its name was Brainiac. Said monstrosity was now looking outside of his chambers as he looked at the world he had recently destroyed and collected all of its secrets and valuable people before he created and experimented on his ultimate weapon that he would soon use to destroy the Justice League, who had been a thorn in his side for a long time now. The green alien was hooked up to his chair as he analyzed his latest experiment. Brainiac's log day 115. Since coming to this universe, the creatures here have truly intrigued me to no end. The supernatural show true amazement when it comes to their anatomy, abilities, and their bloodlines. However, the discovery of sacred gears in weak humans have surprised me, and since then I have tried to find the ultimate test subject, one that can use a numerous number of these sacred gears in magic. I had to be so thorough to ensure that there could be no issues with my ultimate life's work. Brainiac said as he looked at the many documents on the many sacred gears he was able to extract from innocent humans and half-breeds until he continued his log. The first 15 specimens I took into my lab were weak and their bodies collapsed after just 2 sacred gears, but my scanner showed me an incredible human that had the heart and body of a warrior. I was amazed that this warrior was born human but yet had the most potential than all of the other candidates of the world, even the ones from the so-called hero faction. The subject's name was Issei, and he was a truly interesting one to say the least. Brainiac said as he recalled his first encounter with a human and how he was able to deal a scar on his face which he wore as a trophy, and a reminder that this experiment could very well end his life if not careful. He fought for his desires and yet was still a powerful warrior who bled through the most devastating situations that even Superman, Doomsday, Darkseid, or even the one who laughs would no doubt die from even with their powers. After taking care of the weak groups that were known as the Gremory clan and the White Dragon Emperor's team, which was a simple task for a being of my intellect, I was able to not only add his hometown, but also experiment on the group's underlings after I added Issei's home to my collection. Brainiac said as he looked at the world in his hand before moving on to the sacred gears. The sacred gears. Sword Birth, Twilight Healing, Eye of Baylor, Blade Blacksmith, Sword Birth, True Longinus, Divine Dividing, the Prison Dragons, Sacred Gears, and Narid Kiri were excellent in fusing with the subject's soul. As for the other sacred gears that I fused with his body, I still haven't gotten a response from them. It could be due to the situation that my subject is in. Perhaps a field test is in order to see how strong he has become. Brainiac said to himself as he walked on his ship to a certain lab that contained his most prized possessions. The many worlds he collected. He looked down and saw the world that his greatest subject once walked upon, which was now reduced to something for him to observe and study during his research time. With the success of the experiment in mind, I continued to place more powerful weapons inside of the boy in hopes that he would become stronger. The swords known as Ascalon, Durandal, Excalibur and Caliburn, as well as other swords such as demon swords and holy swords, produced excellent results when combined with the fused blade blacksmith. The devils, fallen, angels, and other species served their purpose in allowing me to gather data and how to engage in foes that were more powerful than myself. The foolish so-called Mau were easily disposed of after I gathered all of the information that I needed from them. The fallen and angels were mere pests that wouldn't stop flapping their wings, but unfortunately I had a setback because of the angel that called itself Michael destroyed the sacred gear system, so I could not obtain the secrets it held within. The table was filled with files, papers, and books that included information on the other factions and the species that he had in his collection. The research and information that the fallen leader was gracious enough to give me proved to be very useful. The different types of magic were a problem, since my champion didn't have magical potential within him until I found a way to take magic from a person and transfer it to another individual. The abilities of Beelzebub sadly rejected him, but the powers of Asmodeus, the Leviathan's power over ice and water, the power of destruction of the Lucifer, and the Phoenix's ability to manipulate fire and regeneration, bonded with him quite nicely. Brainiac said as he passed many cages that had live specimens that he experimented on, which ranged from humans to supernatural beings that moaned in pain or flinched at seeing their tormentor. The light powers that both the angels and the fallen have bonded with him quite easily, including the senjutsu from the creatures called yokai. There was still so much more that I wished to learn in this world, but I was unable to meet and examine the beings known as Great Red and Office since they have disappeared from this world. Still, well, I would have loved to study them. However, despite losing access to these powerful beings, my greatest achievement is my champion of worlds, who has passed each and every one of my tests with ease and little trouble. Brainiac said as he was in front of a door and typed in a code that opened the door and saw his champion. The body that was chained to the wall. Brainiac walked towards the body and smiled as if he was admiring his work, despite the fact that the boy was put in endless hell as he watched his loved ones die around him, unable to do anything to even save or help them. The body was that of a 23-year-old Issei. The former Red Dragon Emperor was now covered in a new type of armor. This armor was his new form of balance breaker. The whole armor was blue, it has a red visor that was currently black, slid on the helmet, and thanks to Vitra's involvement in the fusion process. The armor had a black mist surrounded him, and the plume was purple as it flowed to the middle of his back. He looked like Lancelot from Fate Zero, which the alien learned after he had been slightly interested in the anime that the people of the world he collected were very interested in. Brainiac was observing his subject's lack of action and hypothesized that Issei was sleeping, so he continued his log. Issei was truly the highlight of this excursion, and once I ensure that he is fully under my control, then I shall release him on Apocalypse, and then Justice League, and watch as my champion crushes them all to dust. End log. Brainiac said as he left the room, but little did the alien genius know, Issei was doing anything else but sleeping. The alien may be incredibly smart, but he unable to notice that Issei's armor had a new interesting feature in it that he gained thanks to his evolution. Issei was internally screaming as he was waiting for the right time to make his move, and sure enough, that time had come. The tassels attached to his helmet flowed in the air as a long tendril came out of it and made its way over to the security bot in the room. Before the robot could register what was about to happen to it, the tendril stabbed the bot's heart, and for a moment, its eyes were red until they turned normal. After Brainiac left the room to begin his continued research on the new world he has collected, the robot that was stabbed walked to the panel and acted like it was working until it hacked into the security camera and put up an illusion of Issei still chained to the wall. The bot then typed in a few commands which released the chains around the human as they fell to the ground. Issei was tried to move but began to fall forward until he was caught by the rogue bot. Issei, it's alright. It's me, Drag. The robot said as it saw the warrior tense up for a few moments until it relaxed after hearing the familiar name. As Issei nodded in reply to Drag, the berserker checked the illusion to make sure it was properly in place, and everything was put back to normal, like nothing even happened. After making sure the illusion was set, Issei then looked at his partner inside of the machine and was still impressed by his new skills that he had to work hard in hiding from the robot. The tendrils actually allowed Issei to insert a person like Drag into a machine or control technology, so when Drag entered the robot, he was able to take it over quite easily and saved his partner from the chains. Thanks to being a soldier of Brainiac, Drag was able to look into the robot's memory to see that their only way for them to get out of the alien ship was by using a boom tube. Issei used the same illusion magic to turn himself into a Brainiac bot as a disguise before the two made their way to the bay. They passed by the collection of humans, devils, angels, fallen, and many other species that were experimented on as some were still alive or barely breathing. As they looked at the bodies that were experimented on, Issei felt rage and almost let his emotions take control as he wanted to do something for the innocent lives that were suffering, but Drag stopped him as they had to keep moving. I understand your rage, but please calm down. We'll get our revenge on Brainiac. I promise. Dryag whispered as Issei nodded slowly before they continued their search until they finally found the engine room that had the boom tube teleportation technology in it. Issei and Drag smiled as the two escapees decided to cause some major damage to the ship as a middle finger to the alien that caused much harm to their world, so Issei used a tendril to hack into the main system and set a self-destruction in 5 minutes, as well as releasing the captured people of his world, and smiled inside the armor as he watched them scatter and begin to take down the ship on the side while facing Brainiac's robots. However, just as the two made their way to the boom tube, a voice stopped them. Interesting, I never would have guessed you had the ability to control and manipulate technology. Brainiac said as he walked into the room from behind them as the disguise wore off and Issei was back in his old form while his visor was glowing bright red. Drag was glaring at Brainiac with his new eyes as he readied to fight and defend his partner as well until Brainiac's eyes widened in surprise and what appeared to be a combination of joy and interest. Ah, the unknown dictator. The sacred gear that allows one to create technology or even control it. Truly, I didn't see much of a result when I placed that device within you, so I brushed it off. An error I won't make again. He said as his extra arms readied themselves as Issei and Drag were ready to fight. Issei roared loudly as he charged at Brainiac with a staff that he had created from his arsenal, before hitting Brainiac a few times, but as the alien tried to repel his champion with his arms, he realized that he was being outnumbered and outmatched, since his arms were split in fighting both Drake and Issei. Issei tried using his tendrils to grab Brainiac, but they only hit a few bots that came in to aid their creator. The robot's eyes glowed red as they attacked Brainiac in retaliation after being infected by Issei's unknown dictator, as Brainiac used his arms and his lasers to combat the rogue soldiers that he built, while Issei used this time to activate the boom tube. The portal roared to life as it was warming up. Drake was fighting with the others converted robots until Brainiac shot the robot's head that Drake was controlling before it deactivated. Now that he no longer had a body, Drake was able to quickly return to Issei's body before he spoke to his partner. "We must leave now," Drake shouted as Issei answered to his partner in a deep and broken voice. Not yet. He lifted his arm as a sword was formed in his left arm. This sword was Excalibur Explosion, an Excalibur that Issei created around the boosted gear's explosion ability. Brainiac's eyes widened as he realized what Issei was about to do. "No!" he shouted as he tried to stop him but was too late as the sword flew in the air and hit the ground. As soon as the explosion activated, Issei smirked in the armor and spoke to the monster who made him suffer for those years. "Hope you rot in hell." The explosion activated as it covered the room in fire as the recoil from the impact sent Issei into the portal and destroyed the boom tube that activated it. Brainiac flew back as well from the impact and was sent to his bridge where he saw that his ship was taking damage in one of the engine rooms. He quickly used his hive mind in his robots to regain control and to turn on the safety measures so he could reduce the damage as much as possible. After sensing that the damage was dealt with, he got up and calculated the damage that was done to his ship by his berserker, but instead of getting angry at it, the alien had a smile on his face. "I sought out the strongest human weapon to defeat the likes of Superman and the threats I predicted from seeing multiple worlds, and now I've done it. Superman, I hope you and your league are ready. Because my ultimate champion is coming to Earth and I will be there to witness your death." Brainiac said as a pillar fell and crumbled away in the fire, which made him sigh as he looked at the damage calculation before he planned his next move. "After I do a couple of repairs and modifications to my ship for when I return to Earth to conquer it," Brainiac said as he began to repair his ship but also smiling, knowing that he would prevent a threat like the one who laughs from appearing in the multiverse again. "Count the days you have left, Batman, for your very strength will become your greatest weakness. I will ensure another version of you never becomes an enemy that threatens the world ever again." With Issei was in the boom tube flying aimlessly as he had no destination in mind, but still wished to get away from the monster that tortured him and took away his home, friends, family, and wives. Drake could sense his partner's pain and hoped that out somehow, someway, that in another world, someone would be able to save his partner from the damage done to his mind and heart. Since Issei was now armed with many weapons and powers that once belonged to the greatest of warriors and heroes, the Red Dragon Emperor is now lonely and is lost without his loved ones that he fought and bled for, along with his comrades and family. Perhaps in this new world, you can learn how to live again and maybe even love. Riaz and the others would have wanted you to live, Issei, but know that I'll always be here for you, partner. Drake said to comfort his partner, which Issei was thankful as their thoughts were soon interrupted by a blast from somewhere, sending them flying towards a location on Earth. Metropolis. Issei looked around as he was in awe of the massive city before he looked to see that it was nighttime and that he was tired and exhausted from the breakout, so his body moved to an abandoned alley that he believed would keep him safe before he entered sleep mode, while Drake kept watch over his partner's body. "Rest for now, Issei. I'll keep an eye on this new world for both of our sakes," Brainiac said as Issei nodded in reply before he slept peacefully but still kept his guard up as he was hoping no one would disturb him. Unfortunately, things don't always work out the way they should. Especially when there was a woman who had detected the boom tube and was curious about the night that had landed in the city of Metropolis before she typed a number on her phone before speaking to the man on the other side of the call. "Dr. Grant. It seems we have a visitor from another world. I'm sending you the coordinates of its location. Bring it in and figure out if it's a threat to us or not. That's the reason Cadmus was created," the woman said as she hung up the phone and sighed as she looked at the files on the other projects that their organization was working on to counter mankind's greatest threat. The Justice League. 5 days later. Dr. Grant let out a loud sigh as he looked over the reports concerning their latest subject. Cadmus has just found the Knight in an abandoned alley inside of Metropolis. They were surprised to see that the Knight was just standing there, unmoving like a statue, and they had to use some serious equipment to even carry the thing, since it was incredibly heavy, despite the Knight not being that large to begin with. The thing in question looked like some kind of knight that was out of the medieval era, since it was as similar to some of the other medieval heroes that they had seen, like Shining Knight. Luckily, thanks to their technology they were able to at least confirm that whatever was inside of the armor was humanoid of sorts, but the real issue was that they didn't what it was, since they had never had readings like this. Even after doing multiple scans, they were able to confirm that it was part human, but everything else didn't make sense, since it seemed to have other features that they couldn't identify, since they couldn't pry open the armor. They tried to open the armor many ways, but resulted in little to no success. Every time they tried to even deny it with their robots or machines, the tendrils or tassels on the knight's helmet would just attach themselves to the equipment and either absorb it inside of the armor or transform it into some kind of weapon that they had never seen before. Right now, all of the scientists were at their wits' end with this thing, and the head scientist, Dr. Grant, was seriously considering of just ending their project and experiments on the night when suddenly, a miracle happened to appear in the lab as the Wall herself came into the lab to see the tired scientist. Amanda Waller herself walked towards the doctor and spoke to him. "I've heard you and your team are having problems with our guest," Amanda asked as the doctor sighed and nodded before he spoke to his superior. "This. Waller, what are you doing here?" he asked the head of Project Cadmus before the Wall replied to him as she looked over the results of their failed experiments on the armor until she replied to him. "I heard some interesting things about our friend that we have here. Something about an armor that won't open?" Amanda asked as Dr. Grant sighed but nodded as he gave her the report. "Yes. We found the armor, like you said, inside of an abandoned alley in Metropolis, and we were able to secure it and bring it here before anybody else saw it. However, we can't open it no matter what we do to it," Grant said as he showed videos of what has happened for the past 5 days, as Amanda studied the videos before nodding as they ended. "I already know about the failed attempts to open it, which is why I brought someone here to help," Amanda said as she gestured behind her for a person to slowly walk towards the duo as Grant gasped at the person. She was a young girl with pitch black hair and black pupils, along with a blank expression on her face. She was holding a small doll in her hands that looked just like herself. Grant was surprised by this sudden development as he looked at Amanda for clarification. "Isn't she?" Grant said as Waller answered his unspoken question. "Yes. Dr. Grant, allow me to introduce Ace," Amanda said while Ace stood still and motionless like a doll as the head of Cadmus explained her use for this experiment. "She will be helping you with your little problem." Ace had never felt so much fear and anxiety as she stared at the armor standing motionless in the center of the chamber that it was in. As she walked closer to the armor, she couldn't help but admire its beauty and color, since it was dark blue as the night and a purple plume reached its back. As soon as she was right in front of it, the armor hadn't moved and stood still as a statue, as though it wasn't alive, but Ace knew otherwise. Thanks to her powers, she could feel it. The emotions that the being in the armor felt as she got even closer to it, that she looked back at Amanda Waller with a nervous look on her face, as she couldn't believe the raw feelings and emotions that the armor was radiating. Grief, anger, sorrow, despair, disgust, pain, and much more. "Ace," Waller's voice on the intercom said, snapping her out of her shock as she heard her orders. "Connect your mind to the thing inside the armor." Ace gulped audibly since she didn't want to connect with the creature in the armor, but just like her life, she didn't have any choice in the matter, so she did as she was told. She closed her eyes and focused on the thing in the armor. However, it was a foolish move since the moment her mind had been linked to the thing in the armor she found herself in a black void, and suddenly memories of the thing in the armor began to assault her. She saw it all. Felt it all. And it hurt. It hurt so much. "Ahhh. Please stop this. They have nothing to do with this," Issei shouted as he watched Brainiac dissect and remove Gasper's sacred gear while performing tests on the other vampires as they screamed in pain and begged it to stop. "Stop. Issei, please don't cry, Issei. I love you no matter what. So please don't cry for me." Asia, Irina, and Zenobia said as the trio then died as they succumbed to their wounds as Brainiac's robots disintegrated their remains. Stop. Bravo Phoenix stuttered a smile as she looked at Issei and linked her hand with his own as she felt her life slip away. "Don't cry, Issei. This way we can be together even if I die before you," she said as she kissed his lips once more before her magic entered his body while Issei roared in pain as he saw his lover die in front of him while Brainiac merely watched in anticipation as he saw the experiment was a success. "Please," Ace said as she felt tears begin to form in her eyes. Grief, anger, rage, hate, pain, sorrow, despair, grief, anger, rage, hate, pain, sorrow, despair. Stop. The Keno and Kaneko screamed as they felt the robots rip off their wings and tail before being forced to endure the experiments that Brainiac put them through. Keno's holy lightning transferred to Issei as well as Kaneko's ninjutsu. And no. Fiba yelled along with Roswis as they tried their hardest to save Issei and the others but were defeated by Brainiac and had been made into trophies for his wall. grief, anger, rage, hate, pain, sorrow, despair, grief, anger, rage, hate, pain, sorrow, despair. Stop. Ace screamed as the memories continued to flood into her mind, experiencing the pain and loss the night had felt. All the rage and pain as well until one final memory hit her. Issei. I love you. Always remember that. Ria said as she closed her eyes and felt her life vanish as she died in front of Issei. Eventually, the memory flow stopped as Ace fell on the floor unconscious while panting heavily and sweating bullets until Waller ordered the agents in guarding the entrance to get her out of there. However, as they tended to Ace, they did not notice the quick flash of red from the visor and the hand slowly clenching into a fist as Issei Haidu saw the girl's memories as well and the pain she endured as well. She is like me. Later. While Issei was preparing to make his move, Drake was getting ready to wake his partner up so they could escape the cell they are in. Time to wake up, partner. We have a busy day ahead of us. A voice said, which caused Issei to slowly break his train of thought as he was now face to face with what looked like a giant purple bunny with green eyes. Well, now that you're awake, I think it's time we check out of this dump and go see where we can lay low and enjoy ourselves. The rabbit said before pulling back to reveal that it was a mask of sorts while the face behind it was human of sorts, but it was really Drake as he patted his partner on the head and nodded. Let's get out of here and see if we can find that girl. Issei just nodded in reply to his partner as he began to walk towards the door before he merely ripped the door open and headed out, uncaring of the alarm he caused. Right. I was going to suggest a quieter approach, but your way works too. Drake said as Issei just continued to walk around the Cadmus Corporation until the rabbit masked man noticed something. Issei. I don't doubt your navigational skills, but that way is not the exit. Drake said as Issei replied to him. I know, Drake, Issei said as he continued to walk as the guards began to appear from around the corner, not that he minded anyway, since he wasn't even afraid of the bullets. But I must get someone important. And with that, he continued on, with Drake as he shook his head in resignation. Alright then. Let's do it your way. It's always more exciting since you do enjoy fighting like your rival. Ahahaha. Drake said, as he threw his hands up in the air with his microphone staff in the air before vanishing from sight. Issei walked towards the place where his goal was. Drake appeared next to him. Now listen. I took a chance to take a look around this place and trust me when I say this. The thing you're looking for. She's heavily guarded. Drake said, as Issei walked past him before Drake floated next to him and continued chatting with him. Now, don't get me wrong, I know you can get through them with no problem and I want to rescue the girl as well. Drake said, before appearing above him. But, if you do rescue her, then you're going to have a hard time getting out of here. However, knowing you, you'll definitely be able to figure out a way to get out of here. He said, as Issei finally arrived at his destination. That's it, showtime. Time for the carnage to begin. Drake said, as he sat down on a few boxes and began to observe the events that will happen. The guards positioned themselves in front of the cell as the captain of the team spoke to him. Halt and return to your cell or we will shoot you. The captain said as Issei didn't give a reply as he summoned a pair of assault guns as he approached the guards, who were sweating bullets as they didn't see the knight stop its advance before the captain yelled at him. Alright, that's it. All men. Fire at will. The captain said as the soldiers fired their guns, but they were sadly deflected by the armor and didn't make a single dent on it as the knight sighed at the men as he began to fire at the men as the carnage began to spill and stain the walls and floors red with their blood. Meanwhile, Ace, who had woken up a while ago, sat on her bed. Her room was Spartan, with only a bed for comfort, but even that was a bitter comfort. She had her head resting on her pillow since her head still ached from the connection she made with him and looked into his mind. After seeing his past and the torture he underwent made her feel like her pain was nothing compared to his. Ace thought she had a terrible time here in Cadmus, but what the man suffered and went through made her pain look like paradise. The experimentation, the pain, the suffering, the despair. She believed it was a miracle that Issei was even alive. Ace didn't think she would have had that endurance or will to survive. In fact, she would be lying if she said she wasn't jealous of his life, so as she continued to think and muse on this, she suddenly heard the sound of combat and yells outside. Ace was curious of what was going on when suddenly, the door was ripped out and was tossed away with a loud clang. And entering was a blue knight with a purple plume as the tall and imposing figure looked down at Ace before gently patting the girl's head, which made the girl stiffen until she felt relaxed and protected under the armored hand. She didn't feel pain or discomfort from this action, but warmth like she felt from her mother before she killed her, accidentally, when she was a baby. Ace breathed slightly as she took the armored hand and put it on her left cheek as Issei just looked at her while she had his hand before he spoke to her. Come with me. Issei said as he took his hand back and outstretched it for her. Ace then looked at his hand for a while, silence dominating the room, before she made her decision. She reached out and grabbed the hand that gave her warmth before she was gently let out by Issei, while still holding her hand. Ace saw the security guards in charge of her unconscious or dead on the floor, while blood stained the walls and glow, but she didn't mind it at all, before being picked up bridal style in Issei's arms as he carried her out of the area, but as they traveled in the hallway. The guards did their best to stop the duo, but Issei had a barrier around them, both as Issei felt annoyed at the guards before using his tassels, as they transformed into guns to shoot them all and kill them as he kept Ace safe from harm. Eventually, he managed to reach the exit and smash through it, still walking with Ace in his arms, before leaping into the air with Ace feeling safe in the knight's arms. As for the remaining guards of Cadmus, they managed to get to the entrance, only to see their targets already way too far away. Baller. One of the guards said on his communicator before seeing their targets vanish from sight. The targets got away. Should we go after them? The guard asked as the reply came back quickly. No. Let them go. None of us would be able to even harm either of them. Keep an eye out for them but do not engage unless ordered to do so. Waller said as she cut off the call as she sighed at the misfortune that had fallen upon their base. Pack up everything. It's time to relocate. Metropolis. Time skip. A few days later. Clark was spending time with his cousin Kara since she was on a school break right for a week, so she decided to hang out with her cousin and check out Metropolis and beat some crime. Unfortunately. Man. I was hoping there would be some action today, but there's not even a single bank robbery happening in Metropolis. Kara said as she licked her ice cream while Clark chuckled at his cousin's actions before patting her head. That's a good thing since low crimes mean that there are fewer people who want to harm others. We're here to protect people and the earth. Not play God. Clark said as Kara groaned out of boredom before an explosion was heard from a bank as a tall figure emerged from the Metropolis bank with bags of money before the figure revealed themselves as they stepped out of the smoke. A tall gunmetal gray-colored person in a suit of power armor smiled at the city as a green beam fired and began to destroy parts of the city until Clark and Kara went to change their clothes until a figure flew from the sky and slammed into the villain as they were revealed as Wonder Woman. Stand down, Metallo. You're not going to win. The Amazon princess said as she punched Metallo into the road as the robot grunted as he slowly stood up and smirked at her. That's true, which is why I brought backup. Metallo said as Wonder Woman was kicked into the bank's truck by Cheetah, who smiled at the Amazon princess before she was joined by Livewire, Killer Frost, and Bane. Well, it seems the Amazon let her guard down. Now where are the others? Cheetah asked herself as Batman and Flash were teleported to the scene as Superman and Supergirl appeared behind the two. Mind if we join in? Superman asked as Wonder Woman stood up and charged at Cheetah and began to fight with her, while Bane rushed at Batman to break him, but the Caped Crusader dodged the tackle and began to throw batarangs at the Venom user. Flash sped towards Livewire and Killer Frost, but before the electric user could shock the daylights out of the Speed Force user, Kara rammed into her like a speeding bullet, leaving the Flash to deal with Frost. Ah. Superman. Glad to see you could make it. To your funeral. Metallo yelled as he fired a kryptonite beam at the Man of Steel, but missed a few times before he was punched by Superman. However, that is what Metallo wanted, as he grabbed Superman's punch and fired a point-blank blast of kryptonite at Superhero, as Superman felt the effects of the space rock harm him. Wonder Woman just finished beating up Cheetah before Flash knocked out Killer Frost after dodging many icicles, while Kara defeated Livewire and tossed her in the pile until she stopped to see Metallo kick Superman away. The Metal Man smiled darkly as he charged up a beam and fired at a small black-haired girl. No. Kara yelled as she tried to speed towards the girl but was too late until she saw a tall man wrap his arms around the girl as she gasped at him. Issei. After what seemed like hours when it was a few minutes, the beam stopped. Issei's clothes were torn by the blast, and Kara gagged a bit when she saw the raw skin and muscle from it, but that disgust soon turned to surprise when his back began to heal, as well as his clothes. Ace looked up at Issei with tears in her eyes, while Issei just smiled at her softly, as if he didn't feel any pain. Ace just launched herself to her protector and hugged him, who just hugged back. Issei just looked at her sadly, before it changed to that of anger. He headed towards Kara, who had floated over to check on him and Ace, before she saw that his face was blank of expressions. Protect Ace, have to do something. With that said, he gave Ace to Kara and began to head towards the fight. Only for Kara to grab his shirt. What are you doing? Kara hissed as she tried to pull him back, however Issei didn't even slow down his movements and was unfazed by Kara's attempts. His only response was an aura coming out of his body. A red and black color was seeping out which caused Kara to freeze from the sheer amount of rage it held, causing her to cease her attempts, thus letting Issei escape her grasp and continue his walk towards to the fight. The battle between the Kryptonian and machine was swift and brutal. Clark did his best and doled out a good amount of punishment, but it was always a battle of attrition, one that he was rapidly losing ground in. Clark then spits out a mouthful of blood after another blow to his jaw rocked him. Superman raised his arms defensively, but his once unyielding physiology that could tank nuclear strikes was dwindling, and the next blow broke through and landed on his face, sending him to the ground with a cry of pain. Metallo kept him from rising again by planting his foot on top of his and pressing down. His decreasing strength was no longer strong enough to push him off. Clark felt despair, this couldn't be the end. But it was too much to hope for last-minute backup, since the others were struggling against Bane, Livewire, who had gotten backup, and Cheetah. Clark wanted to rage in frustration that this robot had bested him, that he had such a weakness that he couldn't overcome on the same level of how normal humans needed air to breathe. A painful reminder that despite all appearances, he and every other Kryptonian aren't invincible. Well, it's been fun Superman, but it's time to die. Metallo said while scoffing at his name as he raised his foot up preparing to crush him and kill the Man of Steel once and for all, but was interrupted by a grasp on his shoulder. He turned around too only to see Death incarnate. Standing in dark blue or purple armor was a knight that had a red visor, which was currently glowing a blood red. The knight itself was shrouded in a dark mist. Metallo realized that he was too late to get away when he tried to punch the knight, only to receive a hard blow to his face, causing his to fly off into the streets. However, the knight was not done yet. With a howl of pure rage, he charged right at the villain. Metallo had barely gotten up before the knight was upon him like a demon chasing down his soul. The knight began his assault as punches and kicks hit every part of Metallo's body. Parts of robot began to break off as he tried to fight back but was blocked or countered by the knight. Eventually, Metallo was left as a limbless figure that the knight dropped when he was done. After he was finished with that, he turned around and approached the now recovering Superman, who was amazed by the knight's strength and power. He leaned down to the superhero and pulled him away from the still glowing kryptonite until they were far enough away for Clark to be unaffected. The armor faded away as the knight revealed to be Issei who was helping him up. "You okay?" he asked the injured superhero as Ace left Kara's arms and stood behind Issei as she held his hand comfortingly. Clark just nodded as he didn't have enough strength to talk. Kara and the other heroes ran over to check on him, while Batman had many questions for the duo in front of them. "I'm afraid you're coming with us," Batman said as Ace was nervous under the man's cold scowl and glare until they were teleported to the Justice League's Watchtower. Ace was nervous as a kitten as she stayed close to Issei and hid behind him as Superman, and the rest of the Justice League looked at them with questions and concerns for them both. "I wanted to thank you for saving my life from Metallo, but I have to ask. What are you and who is the girl next to you?" Superman asked as Ace was still nervous about them if they would be like Cadmus until Issei reassured her by patting her head softly before looking at Superman. "My name is Issei Haidu." "Ace is her name," escaped from Cadmus, Issei said in his broken voice that startled the others as they were trying to gather more information until a cherry voice interrupted their train of thought. "So, Issei, mind telling us what exactly happened back there?" Kara asked, referring to the whole armor as well as crushing Metallo with physical strength alone. "Well, that, my friends, is a long story." A new voice cut in. "Who's there?" Kara said, getting into a fighting stance, her eyes glowing red as the other heroes were also ready to fight despite their battle a few hours ago until, from out of nowhere, there was a man in a strange outfit. He had a black suit with baggy purple pants. He also had arm guards with what looked like handcuffs with purple lights. He held a microphone staff in one hand, but what caught the Justice League's attention the most was the giant purple-furred, red-eyed rabbit mask he had. "Allow me to introduce myself," the strangely dressed man said as he bowed to them. "My is Drag, or if you want my full name, Drag Y Gotch. The Red Dragon Emperor and the Red Dragon of Domination." "Dragon? No offense, Drag," Flash said with a snort, "but you look more like a bunny than a dragon." "Well, I like this form since it allows me to better communicate with humans, but if you want me to be truthful," Drake said before his body quickly transformed into his true form, a large red dragon that let out a gigantic roar, causing them to jump in surprise. "Stick to the bunny. It suits you better," Flash shouted in surprise as Drake went back into his human form, all while chuckling. "Ah, well, that was fun. Anyways, back to the matter at hand, I will be explaining things, just hope you like long stories," Drake said as he took a seat once again on the table. A few hours later. "And that's all of it," Drake said as he took a sip of his tea before placing it on the table as the Justice League absorbed the information that they were given. "So, let me get this straight, your world had various myths and legends that exist, right?" Kara asked. "Yep," Drake answered as the others asked their questions. "And God, the same God of the Bible, God, created these sacred gears, one which you inhabit, and some of them, including you, can kill gods, right?" Wonder Woman asked as Batman was skeptical about this. "Correct. Drake once again answered, knowing the rich boy was skeptical, but he didn't care about the depressed man since Drake had seen many versions of Batman back in his world and from Brainiac's collection when Issei was unconscious and Drake took over to protect his partner. And it turns out that God died sealing the actual beast of the apocalypse. Wonder Woman continued as Drake nodded in reply. Yep. And everything else. All true. Drake continued as Superman took over and asked about the elephant in the room. Alright, but that still doesn't explain how you are here. Clark said as Drake paused, as did Issei and Ace, before Batman narrowed his eyes at the trio and asked. What happened to you? Tell me. What do you know of Brainiac? Drake asked, seeing Issei tensed and clenched his fists tightly while the Justice League, especially the Kryptonians, knew about the alien. Clark bowed his head in apology as Kara patted Issei's unattended arm in a form of apology as Issei slowly raised his right arm and patted her head softly as well before nodding in thanks for the apology. Don't be sorry. It wasn't your fault, but when Brainiac came to your world, let's just say it was a living nightmare. Nobody stood a chance against him. In the end, only Issei remained. We were both sure that he would die, but Brainiac had another plan in mind for him. Instead of killing Issei, he did something much worse. He experimented on Issei, did things that could leave someone dead, in a coma, or both. He used every sacred gear and fused them into Issei, every weapon, every magic he could find, he used it. And Issei went through hell all the while. Drake with his head down, remembering what Issei went through. Everyone was silent and suddenly, Kara hugged Issei as tears left her eyes. You poor guy. I can't imagine what that felt like. Kara said to Issei as he tensed up at first, then relaxed from her touch before Kara let go of Issei as Drake continued the story about their escape, their landing in Metropolis, to their time in Cadmus, to the meeting of Ace, and their breakout. The heroes were mad at what Cadmus did to Ace, none more so Kara, she already had a low opinion of them, but right now it was just lowered. Those bastards. Kara seethed as Clark tried to calm his cousin. Kara. Clark chastised before being interrupted by Kara. Sorry Clark, but it's true. Kara said. They were making Ace a child soldier. A weapon. We have to tell people about this. I know, but we still have to wait until we get evidence, and even then, the government will still want to continue Cadmus. Batman said, as he knew about why Cadmus was created and could understand their motivations and why they did what they did. Trust me. The government will keep Cadmus running with any method as long as they have a way to keep us in check, but before we get into that, we'll have to deal with their fate. Batman said as he looked at the trio before Clark stood up and replied. I say they should join the Justice League. Issei has proven that he is a good person and wishes to protect others. Anyone agree that Issei should join us? Superman asked as the others looked at each other before Batman made his claim. Or should we put them on lockdown and make sure they aren't a threat to us? Batman said as he knew that the alien might have planted a bug on the night or something else that'll harm the Watchtower. However, that was the wrong thing to say as Batman was suddenly pinned to the wall of the meeting room, with Issei glaring at Batman with eyes ready to burn him alive, before Ace's eyes widened and glared at Batman for what he said about them both, even though Issei saved one of their comrades' life. You're just like Cadmus. Ace said as she was about to use her powers until Superman stopped Issei. Issei. Put him down. We have no intention of doing such things to you both. You and Ace have suffered enough. Please put him down. Superman said, hoping to save his friend and the man who saved his life. Luckily, Issei looked at Superman before looking back at Batman and scoffed at the Dark Knight before letting him fall on his ass while heading back to Ace and calming her down. No cages. For either of us, Issei said as he had spent years being an experiment and he won't allow himself or Ace to be a two-lever again. Superman could see his rage before speaking to them. Then how about this? A place for you both to be free, but also learning how to better control your powers. Superman asked, with Issei and Ace looking at each other before looking back at Superman and pointed at Batman. Only if we are not near that monster, Issei said as Superman and the Justice League couldn't understand why Issei had such hatred towards Batman, but kept it to himself. We understand. Superman said before turning to Supergirl. Kara. Tell Mom and Dad that they'll have some guests who will be staying with them for the time being. Kara was excited as she nodded and led both Issei and Ace out of the room, chatting about the farm and things they could do in Smallville. However, Superman turned to Batman and glared at him. That was too far. After hearing their stories about their past, you still decide to lock them up as if they're a threat? Superman asked before Batman replied. We don't know if they're telling the truth or if Brainiac or Cadmus did something to them. I need to make a plan in hopes they turn against us. Oh yeah, because us almost dying to your contingency plans when we turned rogue wasn't bad enough. Flash asked as Wonder Woman entered the talk. Flash is right. Your contingency plans for all of us were hijacked and used against us, which nearly killed us all. And I would make another plan to defend the Earth against you, should you be used against us. Batman said. And who's to say you don't have a plan for yourself should you turn rogue? Hal Jordan asked, making Batman sigh before replying. We're wasting time. We need to decide what their fate is. And we have. They'll stay with my folks and learn not just responsibility, but also have an open area where they can be free and enjoy their freedom. They just were released from hell, who's to say they won't see us as Cadmus if we treat them as a threat rather than children who need help? Superman asked, making Batman mumble under his breath before sighing. Fine. But I still want to check on the Knight if he has any sort of bug from Brainiac. Batman said before John Martian stopped him. I scanned his mind and body before confirming that there was no bug on him. Indeed. I made sure of it as well as Cadmus. Dryag said, sipping on his tea before letting the cup vanish before floating into the air. And I wish to give you all a warning. If you raise your hand against Issei, Haidu and Ace, then you won't just be fighting them, you'll also be fighting me, and trust me when I say that any of us three can kill you, should you try to betray us. Drake said before glaring at Batman. Even you, Batman, or should I say, Bruce Wayne the child afraid of the dark. Drake said, much to Batman's shock before Drake vanished back to Issei, scaring the Justice League as they now know to tread carefully, otherwise they'll make an enemy that would destroy them all before Darkseid, Doomsday, or even Brainiac. Smallville. Welcome to our little farm. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Martha Kent said while Jonathan was shaking hands with Issei, who was in his human form and some actual clothes. Ace, on the other hand, was hiding behind Issei, which made her seem adorable before Kara placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, Ace. They'll love you, I'm sure of it. Kara said, which helped Ace a little as she then waved at the elderly couple before Issei introduced themselves. Thank you, my name is Issei Haidu, this is Ace, Issei said with Ace thanking the Kent family for taking them in before hiding behind Issei again, as he then placed a hand on her head to comfort her, which worked, and Kara could understand why Ace trusted Issei more than her, since Ace and Issei developed a kinship like brother and sister. Ace was a scared little girl who had been in Cadmus for her whole life and treated as a weapon, but now that she's met Issei and he saved her, Issei is her rock that helps her keep her powers in check, but also someone who understands her pain. Kara also mentally patted herself on the back for the clothes she picked out for them with Clark's help, since the two needed a new wardrobe, with a bit of help from Bruce Wayne. Ace was now wearing a sundress that made her look cute and adorable, which made Ace smile when Issei gave her a thumbs up that it suited her wonderfully. Issei on the other hand mostly for t-shirts with his school uniform and formal attire when going on dates with his girlfriends, dances, and the like, however Kara told Issei to dress with some casual clothes, so Issei went with a style that surprisingly suited him, since Kara gave him 2 thumbs up and that he looked more like a badass version of her cousin. Which was understandable since Issei's clothing was basically a fur-collared coat acting as a cape, a green and red shirt with the zipper open, showing the top parts of his and some black straps around his neck, and normal pants with shoes. And on his neck was a necklace that had a dog tag and a dagger. After the introductions, Martha and Jonathan told Issei and Ace they would be happy to look out for them along with Kara, and told Issei he could stay in Clark's old room, before they had a wonderful dinner with Issei shedding some tears as the food brought back memories of him and his family before Brainiac came to his world. Ace saw this and held his hand to comfort him, which made Issei smile at the small girl and patted her head in thanks before the dinner ended with Jonathan telling them that they would be getting up early tomorrow for work, which Issei didn't mind since he wished to help them for their generosity and hospitality. Kara was very surprised to see that Kara's room was very different as she expected it to be, and it was very, very pink. I've never had a little sister before, so I'm happy to help you adjust to life outside of a lab. Kara said as she was in her pajamas before Ace looked at the many stuffed animals before seeing a dragon-like one. Ace picked it up and then hugged it very tightly before looking at Kara with her eyes showing gratitude. Thank you, but does someone like me even deserve this kind of life? Ace asked herself before Kara walked over to her and nodded. Of course you do, especially after what Cadmus did to you when you were just a child. No child should have to go through such a hard life as a soldier. But aren't you a soldier too whenever you wear that cape? No. The cape isn't supposed to mean anything. The symbol on my is a sign of hope for those who cannot defend themselves and give them the strength they need to overcome anything. At least that's what Clark said to me when I asked him about it. Kara said, noticing how Kara looked across the room as if looking through the wall before looking back at Kara. Don't worry about Issei. He's patrolling the farm in case Cadmus comes to the farm. Issei Haidu lived by his name's meaning as honest soldier and looked out for me before we met you and the Justice League. Cadmus told me that they were preparing me to be a weapon for justice. They got their weapon and I got cheated out of my childhood. Ace said with Kara hugging the small girl, comforting her as she could understand some of Kara's pain. Losing control of one's powers and harming the ones you love, but Kara couldn't understand the pain of being a soldier of war. She lost her home to Brainiac and she would have been kept in stasis had it not been for Clark waking her up and having her live with the Kents on their farm. Ace slowly leaned into the hug as she looked into Kara's mind and could tell that the Kryptonian could be trusted, so she let her guard down and let her eyes fall asleep. Kara smiled at Ace, dropping her guard before seeing a figure at her window, almost scaring her if it had not been for her seeing Drake's face. Ace trusts you. Whenever she sleeps, Ace cuddles to the one she trusts, so we are both grateful that you are here for her. Issei was hoping that you could help Ace break out of her shell and help her adjust to life around here without needing to fear Cadmus. Drake said. But what about Issei? Issei will come around, but he's always put others before himself. It's a blessing and curse that I worry about him since he is my brother in all but blood. I made a vow that should we ever escape Brainiac's ship, I would help Issei adjust to a new life. A life where he can live and love again for not others but for himself. That is why I am hoping that maybe your little friends in this league can help Issei learn how to love and live again. Most of his life he's been a human soldier in war, but now he has a chance to just be human. Drake said as he could tell back in their world that Issei was becoming less and less human as the war dragged on with Rizavum and then Brainiac when he almost lost his human side and became a real dragon in body and spirit. Kara was surprised at this before nodding in response. I promise to help him live his life. Kara said with a determined look in her eyes which reminded Drake of the blonde-haired nun that meant a lot to Issei back when she was alive. Heh. You really are as kind as her, Kara. Drake said before leaving the girls alone before Kara looked to see Issei standing on top of the farm, meditating of sorts like a ninja would, before his eyes opened as he then nodded his head towards her, as if sensing Kara was looking at him. Things will definitely get more interesting with them here in Snoozeville. Kara said with a light laugh as she then hugged Ace before making a vow in her mind. I'll make sure to help them both live their life as a human, not just a weapon. Superman could have become like them, but I won't allow it. They both deserve a second chance at a new life, and I'll do whatever I can to help them live and love again. Kara said in her mind, thinking of ways to help them become accustomed to their new life. A certain Batgirl came to mind as she did say something about them needing some help cleaning up the streets and the fun in the city. Maybe Barbara can help. Kara said before smiling at Ace's sleeping form as she then hugged the girl comfortably in her arms. Making a promise to help the broken emperor and the broken princess. Kara yawned a bit as she woke up on her bed to smell something being cooked. Then, she woke up to see that Ace was missing from her bed, startling her, thinking that Cadmus had captured Ace and Issei. However, as she flew downstairs, Kara was surprised to see Issei was in the kitchen cooking and serving breakfast, which consisted of eggs, bacon, pancakes, and fresh fruit. Kara was so captivated by the smell that she almost forgot why she had flown down in such a hurry. You can cook. I didn't know you could make food this delicious, Kara said before seeing Ace in her pajamas, sleeping on the couch. Kara raised a brow, wondering what she was doing down here until Issei spoke for Ace. Ace woke up nightmare. I comforted Ace, but she wished to sleep near me. Issei said as Kara was still getting adjusted to Issei's speech until she noticed how Issei was very tall and fit for someone of his age, as well as the numerous scars on his body that made Kara wonder if they hurt him when he was outside all night. Ah, don't worry about Issei. He's fine, but the scars serve as a reminder for Issei. He'll be fine, but Issei needs time to adjust to his new surroundings. Drake said, holding out a cup of coffee for Kara, who accepted it and thanked the dragon before Kara sat down and enjoyed the breakfast that Issei served her. Ace slowly woke up and thanked Issei for the meal, saying that she enjoyed the food as well. Issei let a small smile appear on his lips as he thanked them for the compliments before heading to the farm to scout out the area. Kara wanted to stop him and tell Issei that he should eat, but Drake stopped her before Issei left the house and carried on his scouting. Why did you stop me? Because it would do no good. Issei is the type of person who cares more about the well-being of others than himself. I want to help him with that issue since he's stubborn and always throws himself in harm's way to protect his loved ones. I know he's basically invincible, but even with all of the power within him, Issei is still a tortured soul who wishes to protect the lives of others without caring about himself. I'm the only reason his mind hasn't broken or Issei is falling into depression. Drake said as he looked down at his coffee and had a sad look on his face while looking back on Issei's torture by Brainiac. Kara knew from what Drake told the Justice League yesterday that Issei was dedicated to his name, meaning honest soldier with emphasis on the soldier. However, Kara still wanted to help the unfortunate soul be able to open up to life. Drake, Kara asked, causing Drake to look at her before Kara continued. What can you tell me about Issei? His personality. Who he was before Brainiac. His hatred for Batman. Something that I can use to help him adjust to life here. Drake could tell that Kara meant every word and had no intentions of harming Issei or Ace, so he decided to let her know about Issei's life. Well, if you really want to know who Issei was before Brainiac, then be prepared for a whirlwind of emotions, Drake said before he began. It all started with a 16-year-old boy going out on a date with a fallen angel. For the next hour, Kara learned more about the man behind the armor, Issei Haidu, and who he was before he became a tortured soul who lost almost everything he loved and held dear to his heart. This helped her plan how she would help both Issei and Ace adjust to life outside of Cadmus. Braig was glad that the Kent family was accepting of Issei and Ace, so he didn't mind giving them some ideas on how to help them, since the two had opposite problems. Ace was a lab rat and forced to do inhumane experiments for an organization that didn't give a shit about her or even care about her well-being. They only saw her as a weapon, and it was people like Cadmus and Batman that made Draig's skin crawl, since he had seen that kind of discrimination in so many lives with his previous partners before Issei. Even when he was with Issei, he despised how discrimination and fear made the ugly sides of people appear on their faces. That's why Issei and Draig personally made a vow that if they found troubled children like Ace, who had been cheated out of childhood and loved ones, they would look after them. Issei, on the other hand, issues dealt with being stubborn and wishing to protect the ones he loved, which Draig admired and grew concerned with since, during the war with Brainiac and with Rizavum, Issei was tempted to go all out and even sacrifice all of his humanity to have the power to destroy not just Trahexa, but also Rizavum. The soldier wasn't one to die so easily. However, no matter how many times Draig told Issei to rest, even when Brainiac invaded their world, Issei still fought to protect and save as many lives as he could until the day came when Issei was captured and couldn't do anything to save anyone. Draig could tell that the Kent family could help Issei with not just responsibility, but also help Issei and Ace with their issues when it comes to their emotional states, so what's the problem with a dragon lending a claw to help out his brother and little sister? A month later. Jonathan Kent had seen many things in his life since adopting Clark, but the newcomer Issei was a good man, since the knight seemed to be enjoying the feel of something other than metal, for who knows how long. Jonathan also saw that Issei was a responsible lad who seemed to enjoy helping out on the farm and tending to the animals, especially the rowdy horse, which seemed to hate everyone, even Kara. The horse was actually an old girl who had been put through the horse races so many times that she nearly died from exhaustion until she was rescued from her previous owner, who tried to give her some medicine to help the demon horse run faster. Jonathan was more than happy to take the horse in, but the horse seemed to be content with just himself and Martha Kent. That is why Jonathan was shocked to see the horse allow Issei to touch her and feed her carrots. "Well, I'll be darned. I've never seen Eclipse warm up to anyone as fast as you," Jonathan said, Issei tilting his head in confusion. The horse nuzzled his hand some more for more attention, which Issei reciprocated. Issei smiled at Eclipse, placing her head over his shoulder to hug him. "She is very warm," Issei said before hugging the horse back until he let the horse go and began to help Jonathan with the other jobs around the farm, such as watering the garden, tending to the crops, checking the tractor and car for no issues, and fixing any issues on the barn and fences. Issei was very helpful in the maintenance and repair work. His strength allowed him to easily ensure that there were no issues with either of them, and he even dealt with the issues in the barn. The crops, however, were a problem for Issei since he tried hard not to destroy them, but accidentally ended up squishing half a basket of apples. This was how the Kent couple learned Issei's dislike of apples, much to Kara's amusement, and making Ace giggle at the thought of the knight being so powerful, but hating a simple fruit. That is why Kara began to help Issei learn to control his strength. She could tell that Issei was gentle with people and animals, but he struggled the most with crops and other things. Kara was happy to help Issei enjoy a few things on the farm, such as the warmth of the sun and the cool breeze blowing through the landscape. She even asked Issei to help with her chores, which may have made Kara look lazy, but if Issei was offering to help, then how could she refuse such an offer? Especially since Kara actually challenged Issei to an arm wrestling match, which ended with Issei winning and taking Kara's share of dessert before Issei split it with Ace, who thanked him for it and hugged his waist. Ace also experienced a bit of a change during the first week at the farm. She struggled to show much emotion around people who weren't Issei or Kara, which led to an emotional breakdown when she accidentally broke a plate, thinking she would be punished. Martha calmed her down by telling her it was not an issue. Given her background, Ace was a very emotionally challenged girl, and Issei understood it better than the Kent family, which is why Ace had a nightmare. She went to Issei, who kept the farm and house safe during the night, and stayed at his side before Ace fell asleep, comforted by his aura and presence. Braig also helped Ace adjust to life on the farm by helping her with her emotional development. Since Ace's powers were influenced by her emotional state, both Draig and Issei helped Ace learn to control her emotions, such as rage, sadness, fear, and disgust, which seemed to give her even more power. At the same time, happiness and love brought Ace back to the world. Ace's powers impressed Kara, who was amazed by Ace's powers of telepathy, telekinesis, and perception manipulation. Ace then explained that those who are already insane are somewhat resistant to her powers but not immune. However, Issei was an exception to that one since Ace feared connecting to Issei's mind after she collapsed just after a minute of his memories of his time as Brainiac's prisoner. A month passed, and the Kent family was happy to have the two former escapees with them on the farm. It was also nice to have some company when Kara was with Clark back in Metropolis. Also, both Ace and Issei were smart academics, and streetwise was more Issei's level than Ace's, since Ace was taught at a high school level, while Issei was at a college level. This impressed Kara since she was begging Issei and Ace to help her with her homework at school. This made Issei smile since it reminded him of when he taught Asia the Japanese language and helped her in her studies. However, Clark Kent visited the family for the past month to check on Issei and Ace and see how they were adjusting to life on the farm. Granted, Issei seemed to be speaking a bit more fluently, but his pattern was still broken. Ace, on the other hand, was a bit more confident. She was happy to go with Martha to the store for groceries or to do some activity Martha thought would help Ace out of her shell. Granted, Ace still prefers to be near Issei half the time, but Ace has grown closer to the Kent family and begun to trust them, especially Kara, and even calls her big sister, which makes Supergirl so happy that she breaks the sound barrier after hearing Ace call her by the name. Issei enjoyed Clark's company and even learned more about the Son of Krypton and the many villains he faced and still faces, such as Livewire and Metallo, until Clark asked Issei why he destroyed Metallo instead of hindering him. And the answer scared Clark. Flashback. Metallo was hurting you with a stone. He tried to harm Ace, he deserved death. The lives, the blood, the pain, the ones Metallo killed screamed for revenge, so I delivered it. But we're not here to play God. Issei looked at Clark and tilted his head. But why allow people like Joker, Lex Luthor, Gorilla Grodd and others to be alive? Do you not fear what they will do to your loved ones? Of course I do, but killing them makes us just as bad as them. And the lives that they killed are meaningless then? No. That's not what I. But you just said killing makes us like them, then what about the rapist? Serial killers? Murders? People who don't desire change? That's not how the Justice League does things. We lock them up for the court to deal with. And the lives who died because of them? They'll get their revenge the right way. Issei looked at Clark Kent before speaking one line that scared the Kryptonian. You remind me of Michael. A man who allowed innocence to suffer while the wicked grew. Then flashback. After that argument, Clark was afraid of Issei's views on justice, so he liked the idea of Kara taking both Issei and Ace to Gotham to visit Barbara Gordon, but Clark was hoping that Batman could help Issei's view on justice. You keep staring at your coffee and it'll get so cold that even heat vision won't warm it up, Jonathan said, startling Clark before he thanked his father and took a sip of his cold drink. I'm sorry, Dad. I was thinking back to my talk with Issei. Are you worried he might do something wrong? Jonathan asked. Clark sighed but nodded before speaking to his father. You know, I would never kill or harm innocents, but what Issei said, it scares me since. Does it remind you of the time you were brainwashed by Darkseid and forced to attack Earth, resulting in almost killing Kara? Jonathan said, surprising Clark before Jonathan continued. Clark, as long as I've known you, I know you regret the consequences of that day and still blame yourself. I won't say that you'll turn into a murderer, but you must understand that even you have desired to kill before and the ones you wished to kill you hesitated against. Remember when you wanted to kill Lex Luthor after the many times he tried to kill you just for existing? What about Darkseid and when you nearly killed him after breaking free of his control? Jonathan explained as Clark looked like he was being scolded until Jonathan continued to speak to his son. Clark, all I'm saying is that you should give Issei a chance. You see Issei as a version of you and think he should be like you, but he isn't you, Clark. Issei was a human and a broken man who was barely functioning when he came here, but now, after your mother and I helped him better understand him, thanks to Drake, Issei is able to show more empathy and compassion. Issei is opening up to us, and sure, he isn't like you and the other members of the League, but he's a kind man who wishes to protect the ones he loves. Sounds familiar, Superman? Jonathan explained as he left Clark alone while looking at his reflection in the coffee before seeing the Justice Lord version of himself, the man who killed Luthor and became a dictator, the alternate universe Superman who killed Joker after losing Lois Lane, and then himself. Clark hated both of his alternate versions, but he couldn't deny that both were part of who he was. So, Clark made a vow that he would never become like them. Superman would make sure that if he ever became like the alternate version of himself, someone would stop him from crossing that line. Maybe Dad's right. Issei isn't me, and I hardly know anything about him. Clark said, then looked at the time to see the Kara, Ace, and Issei should be arriving in Gotham City right now. Perhaps that'll help me better understand who Issei is as a person, Clark said before drinking his coffee and groaning about how cold it was. After I warm up my coffee. Gotham City. Kara. Barbara. Supergirl and Batgirl shouted as they hugged each other, squealing about catching up before Barbara noticed Issei and Ace standing behind her friend. "Oh, and you both must be Issei and Ace, right? My father told me all about you guys." Barbara said this was technically true since Bruce Wayne told Gordon about Issei and Ace coming to Gotham, which would hopefully help Batman deal with a contingency plan to deal with the two new members of the League and dealing with the criminals plaguing Gotham. Barbara saw Ace inspect her as if she were a stranger to her until Issei walked forward and introduced himself, shocking Barbara with how tall Issei was compared to most of the other men in her life. "Issei, hi, nice to see you," Issei said before shaking her hand, which gave Ace more strength as she introduced herself to Barbara before getting close to Issei again. "Don't worry about Ace. She's not used to being around many people, so it takes her a while to warm up to people," Kara explained, and Barbara was surprised by this before leading the trio to her home, where they began to settle in the police commissioner's home. However, Issei sensed they were being watched until he told Ace to go with Barbara and Kara, which Ace did without any hesitation since she stayed by Kara's side. "So what's this case that you and Batman are working on?" Kara asked after they got settled in the house, and Ace asked to go to the bathroom. "Remember when I told you about Joker busting Crane from prison?" "You mean Scarecrow? Why would that clown want Crane? Isn't his main thing making people live out their worst fears?" "Yes, but Joker said he wanted to give all of Gotham a smile during the parade that was going to happen this week. Unfortunately, we don't know how he's planning to distribute some gas, since we think that's why Joker wants Jonathan his skills in chemistry and to combine his fear toxin with the Joker laughing gas." "Are there going to be large balloons or something at this parade?" "No. It's some charity event for nature and such, mostly due to the protesters wanting to stop the mayor from destroying the botanical gardens that were reclaimed after Poison Ivy was locked up back in Arkham. And there will be tons of flowers at this parade." "Yep, but even if the two of them did create their combined gas, they don't know Flora to release it to a large area, especially a city, and the Gotham police are boosting security to prevent any crimes from happening," Barbara explained, making Kara curious as to why her friend invited her to the parade. "I wanted to catch up with you after we took down Livewire, Harley, and Ivy. I also wanted to meet Ace and Issei, since Batman has been curious about them for a while now. Thirdly, we could use some extra muscle to find out where Joker and Scarecrow are before they strike at the parade. Joker is smart and he's probably got some way to get the gas into the parade if they haven't already made it." Kara thanked Barbara for being honest as the two began to chat. She forgot about Ace and what she was really doing since her eyes narrowed while she was closed, speaking to her brother protector. "Issei, did you get all that?" Ace asked before receiving a response from Issei. "Yes. What will we do?" "Keep them busy. Learn all you can while I do my own investigation." "Okay. Be careful, Issei. I will return. I promise." "I know," Ace said before cutting off her connection with Issei. She then washed her hands to sell the story while praying that Issei would be safe and save the people of the city from the Clown Prince of Mayhem. Meanwhile, with the broken Emperor, Issei felt the connection was cut off as he walked down the streets of Gotham, admiring some of the scenery before walking into an alley far away from the commissioner's home. "So, we're playing detective now?" Drake asked as he pulled out a detective hat and pipe before blowing into it, making bubbles. This caused Issei to laugh a bit at the image before him until Issei gave no verbal response but a nod. Issei continued to walk through the alley before a pebble flew through the air and almost hit his head, forcing Drake to catch it and causing Issei to look up at a red helmet. "Hey, you're the guy known as Issei, right? I want to talk to you," the man behind the helmet said before he ushered Issei to follow him. The Emperor nodded as he leaped onto the rooftop and looked to see that the man was none other than Red Hood himself. "I heard about you from the old man and how you didn't hesitate to rip apart that tin can Metallo or nearly kill Batman," Red Hood said before pulling off his helmet to reveal his face. This made Issei nod in acknowledgement of Jason Todd's appearance, since Issei knew of the broken boy who was abandoned and tortured by the Joker for almost 2 years in Arkham Asylum. "Ah. Red Hood, or do you prefer Jason Todd?" Drake asked. Jason pointed a gun at Drake, who laughed at the sight of the gun before pushing it out of his way. "I wouldn't try that if I were you. Now, what do you want with Issei?" Dryag asked, making Jason sigh as he put the gun away before speaking to Issei. "I bet you don't know about the Joker busting Scarecrow out of prison, but that psycho needs him to make a gas that'll spread through all of Gotham and cause the people to laugh and live their worst fears until they die. I already have a crew with me to find Joker and Scarecrow, but I need a heavy hitter, someone who wouldn't hesitate to kill, which is where you come in, Issei. I need your help." Jason explained that Drake was surprised by this since he's seen in the other worlds how Joker was a monster that had to be killed, but the moral code of heroes prevented Batman because he was afraid of becoming like Joker. Greg has seen many people like those great heroes like Superman, Batman, and even Wonder Woman have their codes not to take an innocent life, but all those codes did was prevent them from doing what had to be done. Both Drake and Albion's partners have seen both the good and bad of the world in many factions, and many times, their code only delays the killers from taking more lives with deadlier plans. Issei has killed a few times, but he never kills unless he has to protect his loved ones. Issei nearly killed Diodora when he captured Asia, Raynor when he took Asia's life for the Twilight Healing, Kakabiel when he tried to restart the Great War, Rizavam when he released Trahixa, and finally Brainiac. Issei has had the urge to kill those who didn't deserve mercy. It was hard for Issei sometimes since there were a few good people like Vali, but others like Cao Cao were troublesome since his crimes were cruel to the many lives he'd taken. Still, he did pay for his crimes by working to repair the damage after the war until Brainiac killed him. Issei then looked at Jason and recalled the many times in other worlds that he had seen Jason become broken in so many ways. This made Issei recall the times he feared that Kiba would become an Avenger should he have killed or gone rogue for revenge on his past. Issei's mind was calm as he nodded in response to Jason's request before extending a hand out towards him. "I will help but only if we kill the Joker," Issei said, making Jason smile in response before taking his hand. "Agreed, and don't worry. The Joker will die. I swear on my name," Jason said before giving Issei a cell phone. "I'll contact you about the plan later, but I have a job for you. In order to find Joker and Scarecrow, we need someone who knows more about plants, since I have a feeling Joker will be using the parade to his advantage. The problem is that there's only one villain in Gotham who knows more about plant life than anyone I know," Jason explained before Drake asked. "You wouldn't happen to mean Poison Ivy, the environmentalist with plant-based powers, right?" Drake asked, making Jason sigh in response. "I'd be lying if I said no." Drake looked at Issei for a moment, who seemed calm, before speaking to Jason. "Did you inform Batman of your plan?" Jason was silent before looking away from Issei. "I can't forgive him. He abandoned me, replaced me, and left me with that psycho clown for 2 years." Jason shouted as he then punched an AC unit before groaning at his broken fist. Issei walked over to Jason and placed a hand on the bruised and broken knuckle. A green light left Issei's hand and healed the broken hand, shocking Jason. "You shouldn't punch in rage," Issei said, and Jason was shocked by the knight's reaction. Issei looked down at Jason before patting his head, shocking Jason a bit until Issei spoke to him. "I'm sorry. No one should suffer as much as you did," Issei said before taking his hand away from Jason. Drake looked at Issei for a moment before speaking to Jason. "We can go speak to Poison Ivy, but it's best you speak to Batman about your plan. I'm sure he'll be able to help," Drake said before Issei summoned his knight armor on his body, shocking Jason of the tall knight. Then, Issei leaped into the air and summoned his wings, which expanded to a 12-foot wingspan. Issei then flew through the night sky, taking in the sights of the city lights before spotting the asylum and landing a few miles away. It's an interesting place to hold villains instead of an actual prison. So what's the plan to get in?" Drake asked before Issei became his female counterpart, which he used to deceive others and was created thanks to his powers of Asmodeus. Issei's female form, Amu, was a very beautiful girl with a curvy figure. She had long dark brown hair that reached to her knees and dark brown eyes. She then snapped her fingers and had a uniform appear on her body. It was a form-fitting black dress with a low backside and no straps, black high-heel boots, and elegant black gloves with red lines running up the length to end with circles. Going for your alter ego. Nice way to play it safe." Drake said that he knew that when Issei turned into his alter ego, his nickname, the embodiment of lust, came into play. Amu then cleared her throat before her eyes became more of sirens as she used the lost sacred gear known as Parish Symphony, also known as the Song of God, as a Longinus-class sacred gear. This sacred gear gives the user the ability to manipulate and generate music, an art form whose medium is sound and silence. Its common elements are pitch, which governs melody and harmony, rhythm, and its associated concepts of tempo, meter, and articulation, dynamics, the sonic qualities of timbre and texture. Its base powers include soothing angered hearts, influencing thoughts and actions, and even inducing sleep for a certain amount of time. However, the sacred gear is much more complex in its abilities. It is considered the 5th most powerful sacred gear after Innovate Clear. It was also implied that one of the past wielders, and the most powerful, was none other than the Pied Piper. Other wielders are rumored to be Mozart, Bach, and even Beethoven. Brainiac actually enjoyed the art of music and recalled how the Leviathan heiress was able to use songs to control dragons. So, he used Parish Symphony to aid Issei in manipulating others, which worked wonderfully with his female alter ego. Drake smiled as Amu began to walk towards the asylum while summoning some popcorn. "Time for the siren to take her stage," Drake said as Amu began to sing. Hey, going to the parade this weekend? One of the guards asked while patrolling the area before his partner replied. Nah. I signed up for a double shift this week. I'm trying to earn some extra money for my second anniversary with my wife. No way, man, congratulations. Thanks. We've always talked about wanting to go to a nice tropical island, you know, to get away from the chaos and such. Yeah, I get it, but hey, congratulations on you and your wife making it to 2 years. Thanks, man. I'm hoping I'll live long enough before Joker and Scarecrow try anything. Yeah, no kidding. The single guard said before something began to echo in the air as if it were singing. Hey, do you hear that? Hear what? It sounds like someone is singing. What? Man, you're crazy. The married guard said as the voice began to rise and echo through the yard. The guards were shocked by this as a thick fog began to roll into the yard as well, while the singing got louder. The guards were about to radio it in until they saw Moo appear in the mist, her voice being raised high into the air. The guards were shocked by her appearance until their bodies collapsed as if they were lulled to sleep. Braid watched in amusement as Moo approached the asylum. Her enchanting voice echoed through the air, drawing the attention of anyone nearby. The guards at the asylum were entranced by her song, their movement slowing as they listened intently before they fell asleep. Slowly and surely, the guards became more relaxed, making it easier for Moo to slip past them unnoticed. Drake grabbed an access key, opened the asylum, and removed the security cameras while Moo continued her performance, her mesmerizing song guiding her. Moo made her way deeper into the asylum, navigating the halls with ease, while the prisoners were shocked to see a woman stroll into the asylum, which made them slowly succumb to her song as well, until Drake pointed the way to Poison Ivy's cell and approached it confidently. Ivy looked up as Moo entered, her expression curious but cautious. Who are you? Ivy asked, eyeing Moo warily until Drake replied for Moo, who was still singing, causing her song to resonate throughout the whole asylum. We are but humble travelers, drawn to your presence by the beauty of your spirit, Drake replied, while Moo's voice still carried the enchanting melody. Ivy seemed intrigued by the dragon's words, her guard lowering slightly as she listened to the song that echoed in her prison. Drake took the opportunity to engage Ivy in conversation, subtly probing for information about Joker and Scarecrow's plans. So why would the Joker break Scarecrow out of the prison? Because Joker needs the doctor's skills and his fear toxin to make the gas spread far to cover the whole city, but little do either of them know that I made a plan to counter the gas should it ever happen, Ivy said as her defenses continued to weaken, her trust in Moo and Drake growing with each passing moment. But you also care about someone else, yes? Dryag asked, with Ivy moaning in arousal as the song continued to soothe her soul. Yes. Harley Quinn. I'm worried about her since I haven't seen her since she broke out with Joker. Ivy said in worry as her feelings for Harley began to be revealed to the dragon, who was already aware of this since, in Brainiac's ship, there were many files and heroes and villains that he prepared to save for should he ever come across. Well, why don't we take you out of here? I'm sure if you help us, then you can save Harley and kill Joker. Drake said, shocking Ivy as she smiled at the idea before agreeing to work with them, giving Drake a chance to unlock her prison. Fresh air. So much better, Ivy said as she moaned, her skin becoming a healthy shade of green, before the trio began to leave the asylum. Moo's song faded away as they left the asylum behind. Outside, Drake chuckled as he watched Moo's transformation back into Issei. Well played, Issei. Looks like we have what we need, Drake said, impressed by Issei's skillful deception. Issei nodded, his expression serious as he processed the information they had gathered. With Joker and Scarecrow's plans now laid bare, it was up to him and Red Hood to put an end to their scheme before it could unfold. As Issei and Drake made their way out of the asylum with Poison Ivy in tow, they saw Red Hood waiting for them outside, his arms crossed and his face serious. Did you get what we need? Red Hood asked, his gaze flickering between Issei and Ivy. Issei nodded, with Drake explaining the information they had gathered about Joker and Scarecrow's plans. We have the details. Now, what's the next step? Red Hood took the information, scanning through it quickly before nodding in approval. Good work. Now, we need to track down Joker and Scarecrow before they can execute their plan. Ivy, do you have any idea where they might be hiding out? Ivy thought for a moment, tapping her chin as she recalled the last time she had seen Joker. Last I heard, Joker was holed up in an abandoned amusement park on the outskirts of Gotham. It's one of his favorite hideouts. Red Hood nodded, turning to Issei and Drake. Alright, we'll start there, but we'll need that flower Ivy has that can deal with the gas. Drake, can you take her there? Of course, Drake said before Ivy stopped him. Thanks, but I have my travel system. I'll get the flower and meet you there, Ivy said before a massive flower bulb appeared from the ground and covered her up until it went back underground with Ivy. Do you think she'll help us? Ivy is many things, but she does care about Harley and hates Joker as well as anyone who tries to harm the parade. Red Hoof said before Issei cracked his knuckles, a determined look in his eyes. Let's kill the clown, Issei said after sending Ace a message about what was happening. Ace nodded as she walked through the house, seeing that both Kara and Barbara were asleep on the couch because Ace had knocked them out with her powers before. Ace then began to change into the Batgirl costume to hide her identity before informing Issei that she would be meeting him at the park. While Issei was speaking to Ace about the meeting place, the trio made their way to the abandoned amusement park, the night air thick with tension as they prepared to confront Joker and Scarecrow. As they approached the entrance, they could hear the faint sound of laughter echoing through the empty halls, sending a shiver down their spines. Mostly Red Hood, since the nightmares of his torture were strong, until he spoke to the others. Stay alert, Red Hood whispered, his hand hovering over his gun as they entered the park. Joker's tricks can be deadly. Issei and Drake nodded in agreement, their senses on high alert as they moved cautiously through the darkened corridors. Drake then vanished back into Issei, who understood his reasons before. They heard the sound of footsteps approaching, and they quickly ducked behind a nearby concession stand, their hearts racing as they waited for the source of the noise to reveal itself. To their surprise, it was Scarecrow who emerged from the shadows, his face painted with a manic grin as he walked through the park, humming to herself. Well, what do we have here? Scarecrow said, his voice dripping with malice as he spotted the duo hiding in the shadows. Looks like we've got ourselves some new test subjects, Joker. Before they could react, Joker himself appeared behind Scarecrow, his signature grin stretching from ear to ear as he clapped his hands in delight. Well, what do we have here? Joker echoed, his voice tinged with madness as he surveyed the duo before him. A knight in shining armor and my old sidekick, Red Face. How delightful. Issei clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing as he stared down the clown prince of crime, recalling all the things Joker had done before Red Hood pulled out a gun and aimed it at Joker. Joker, it's over. We know about your plan and are here to stop you. Joker's grin widened, his eyes gleaming with malice as he stepped forward, his hand reaching for the gun at his side. Oh, but you see, dear boy, the fun's just getting started. And as for your little plan, well, let's say I have a few tricks up my sleeve. With that, Joker snapped his fingers, and the ground beneath their feet began to rumble as a series of explosions rocked the park, sending debris flying in every direction. Issei and Red Hood leaped into action, dodging the blasts as they fought their way through the Joker's henchmen. Their skills and powers proved to be more than a match for the clown's twisted army. Issei then roared, scaring the goons, leaving themselves open for Red Hood to deal with them until Joker booed them both. Boo. You are ruining the fun. Joker said before looking at Scarecrow as the Master of Fear pulled out his fear toxin at the ready as he prepared to unleash his most terrifying nightmares upon them. The gas has already been completed, but let's see how well Red Hood can hide from his fears. The Scarecrow shouted as he laughed, the gas enveloping him and causing him to become his nightmare self. Scarecrow then emerged from the fear gas as a tall, nightmarish creature with features resembling those of a scarecrow and a skeletal corpse, his eyes and mouth glow bright orange, with a chained hook-like sickle. Red Hood breathed heavily as his head began to show the hallucinations of his time back in Arkham Asylum, with that psychotic clown torturing him, making Scarecrow laugh and enjoy the boy's fear. However, what shocked the Master of Fear was that Issei didn't seem affected at all. He was standing there with a blank look in his eyes as if he was dreaming about something. What? I don't understand. Why aren't you afraid? Scarecrow shouted as he tried to figure out what was making the boy not show fear, since even Batman showed fear under the influence of the fear gas. However, Issei didn't pay the man any mind, since there was some truth to the fear gas. In his mind, Issei did see the hallucinations of his friends, family, and loved ones dying, begging him to save them. All they did was remind Issei of how sad he was that he couldn't save them instead of fear, which is why his right eye began to shed a tear instead of fear, surprising Crane. What are you feeling? You cry since you appear to be under my fear gas, so why don't you show me some fear? Crane asked in shock. Issei's eyes seemed to return to normal, and then Issei looked at Crane and punched him so hard that the Scarecrow was sent flying into the merry-go-round. Issei then walked towards the ride while his body seemed to transform. You claim to be the Master of Fear just because your father abused you as a child, Issei said as he continued to walk towards Crane, who was slowly getting up and moving away from Issei's approaching form. Do you have any idea of what I've endured? Issei asked as his eyes began to glow with a certain power that forced Crane's body to freeze in position. However, his eyes and ears remained open to the words of the broken man. I've endured hell. Issei's eyes turned blood red. I've seen death. Dragon wings emerged from the Emperor's back, making him appear more threatening. I've embraced darkness too many times I could be married to it. Issei's body slowly began to transform into more of a beast. I've felt, heard, tasted, experienced, and was forced to watch the memories and fear of my friends, my family, my loved one die over and over and over again. Crane continued to try to move, but his body denied him any movement. The figure kept walking towards him, as if the Grim Reaper was approaching his mortal body. It fucked up my mind so much that I thought a coma was the best way to free my mind, body, and soul from that pain. But I lived through it and used it to live and protect. Issei's armor began to change to a more bloody crimson color, with his fangs appearing more vampire-style than a dragon. Your version of fear is nothing more than a mere child who thinks he can control such a thing, all because he was tortured by his bastard of a father and had so much of that fear gas in his blood that he developed an addiction to it. Crane was frozen with fear as he looked at Issei's body, which became more and more horrific as the Emperor began to grow. In contrast, bats, rats, spiders, snakes, lizards, bugs of all kinds, and wolves began to form around him, scaring Crane as his eyes widened at the sight of Issei Haidu before him as something more terrifying than even Batman. "Now then, Jonathan Crane, you claim to know real fear?" Issei asked before his cold and sinister laughter echoed through the park. Crane was unable to move a muscle until the face of a demonic eldritch horror appeared before Scarecrow, making him feel like nothing but an insignificant creature before God. "Then allow me to show you what true fear is." Issei shouted as Crane's mouth opened, and his screams echoed through the park, with the animals tearing into his skin and consuming him. The animals showed no mercy as their master willed them to destroy the man before them with their claws, fangs, venom, and any other tool at their disposal. Issei let his pets have their fun before walking towards Jason. He placed a hand on his head, removed the helmet, and used twilight healing to calm his mind. This worked, as Jason began to breathe a bit easier until he collapsed in Issei's arms, with the Emperor calming down the tortured boy's mind. Issei then used a small whirlwind to blow away all of the fear gas, revealing Crane's true form was unharmed. Issei's powers struck fear into the heart and mind of Scarecrow because he was able to achieve a vampire dragon form with the eyes of Baylor and the powers of the many vampires that were given to him by the vampire faction. Issei looked around to see Joker was gone but sensed Ace approaching them. Ace flew with her telekinesis and landed next to Issei before looking down at Red Hood. "Is he okay?" Issei nodded before calling the police about the Scarecrow being found at the park, leaving the shivering Crane curled up in a ball, scratching his head and body and muttering to himself to get rid of them. "Please, please." Issei then stopped as he looked back to Crane's body before sighing and giving Jason to Ace, which was a bit of a struggle since Jason was taller and bulkier than her. Issei walked back to Crane, placing a hand on his head, and calmed him with Senjutsu before he left Crane asleep on the ground. Braig smiled at this as he knew Issei wasn't the type to torture his enemies before patting Issei on the back. "You did a good thing, Issei. I'm proud of you. Now let's go see how Poison Ivy is doing with that flower." Drake said as both Issei and Ace flew with Jason in the air towards the botanical gardens where Poison Ivy was preparing the antidote to deal with the Joker's laughing fear gas. The stage has been set and now the broken Emperor shall reveal his ideals and how he deals with villains. Of Poison Ivy. So the good news is, the sample you got for me from Crane is definitely a combination of Joker venom and Scarecrow's fear gas. However, if what this information is telling me, then it's not for a gas to send through the city. Still, an explosion, but this doesn't make any sense since if they wanted to cover the whole city of Gotham, they need to get the gas high enough for it to rain down and cover the whole area. Pamela Isley said as she looked over the sample and formula that was used to make the fusion. "So, wait a minute. You're saying it's weak if it doesn't make airborne?" "That's right. In order for the gas to cover all of Gotham, balloons have to be launched airborne and blown up at the same time, but that makes no sense since flowers can't do that and there are no balloons at the parade, with the security forces making sure there aren't any." Pamela said in confusion while Jason tried to figure out how Joker would go through with the plan and why leave Scarecrow behind. Braig and Ace were playing solitaire while Issei was standing next to a giant Venus flytrap that seemed to be calm around him before Issei spoke to them. "Fireworks?" Jason and Pamela were shocked at this before Issei spoke to them. "Fireworks at the parade around the end of the parade." Jason and Pamela's eyes widened as Jason looked up at the parade floats and for any fireworks before finding what he needed. "I got it. It's a new firework powered by a new energy fuel that doesn't harm the environment. It'll be launched at the end of the parade. It'll be so high that the fireworks will cover all of Gotham for all to see. That's got to be it," Jason said before Pamela looked at Issei with curious eyes and asked. "How did you know about the fireworks?" Issei looked at her before responding to the question. "I used the newspaper," Issei said, showing a newspaper opened up to the front page. Pamela was surprised before Issei spoke to her. "You cared for nature, yes?" "That's right. I went through a lot when I was a human until I was injected with so many toxins and became this. After I became connected with Mother Earth, something just awakened within you?" Issei asked, causing Pamela to be shocked before she replied with a smile. "Yeah. Can you connect to the Earth as well?" Issei didn't respond but placed a hand on the ground as a few flowers appeared until they wrapped around each other to form a crown. Issei picked up said crown and placed it on Pamela's head and did a little bow for her. "The queen deserves a crown," Issei said, making Pamela blush. She started to feel her heartbeat very loudly and she could feel the earth connecting to Issei, as if the earth saw him as a protector, a gentle giant, a king. Pamela wanted to ask him another question until Jason stopped her. "I just got word. The fireworks hunch was right and it looks like they're getting attacked by a group that's calling themselves the Royal Flush Gang. I've heard of those kids. They're basically superpowers kids who were in Cadmus before the Joker freed them and now they work for the clown. There are 4 of them. One can control metal, one is a pyro, the other can stretch, and the last one is basically another Bane, strong as oak but very hard-headed." Pamela explained, Issei's body shaking, worrying Pamela and Jason before Ace spoke to them. "He's not in pain. He's laughing," Ace said. Issei continued to laugh until his body stopped shaking, making them both relax until Jason began to discuss the plan. "Well, head over to the fireworks company and check on the damage and where they possibly took the fireworks while Pamela and Issei pose as people of the crowd," Jason explained, and Issei agreed to this. Pamela was fine with the arrangement until she stopped Jason and asked, "Can you ask if Harley was with them?" Pamela asked before Jason nodded his head. They were getting ready, with Issei wearing civilian clothes, Ace acting as their daughter, and Pamela acting as their mother. However, while they were preparing for the operation, Ace was making a call to Kara and left a voicemail. "Kara, listen carefully," Ace said, hoping Kara would be able to receive the message before it was too late. Meanwhile, with the wall. "Are you sure the Royal Flush Gang working with the Joker are the same kids?" Amanda asked, and Dr. Grant nodded before Waller decided their next move. "Priapor Galadia. We'll need her to bring them in quietly. We don't want the Justice League to know about our own Kryptonian," Amanda said before Dr. Grant nodded and ended the transmission. "We need those kids to make sure that our country can be protected from the Justice League when they turn against us. Which is why I'm hoping you'll make sure that there are no issues with the extraction, right Lex?" Amanda asked, Lex Luthor smiling at Amanda before replying to her. "Don't worry. I'll make sure that you're not held responsible for them and hide behind the scenes like I always do," Lex said before adjusting his suit. "Hopefully, when I make my appearance in Gotham, it'll help me gain some more followers as well, so that I can donate a generous amount to my favorite charity." Waller rolled her eyes at Lex's wording before the bold businessman left the wall alone. She then sighed, looking at a picture of Ace with a sad expression on her face. "I hope you're doing well, Ace. Out of all the 5 kids, you deserve the most freedom after all that's happened to you." Amanda said that before leaving her office, she was hoping to extract the Royal Flush Gang before they help the Joker do more harm than good. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.